The triumphant finale of Bruckner 8, the last symphony that the composer completed, is a marvel of compositional structure and clarity of process. It technically sits on the sonata form, but first of all, it has three subjects, and second, the form is stretched in all its parts via a very individual interpretation of it. Bruckner had already gone through this approach in the first movement of his Seventh Symphony. But in this one, being the last movement, he adds the sum of the entire symphony, retrieving themes from all previous movements in various ways. Hello everyone, I'm Gianmaria Griglio, and I welcome you to a new episode of Conducting Pills. If you're new here, this channel is all about classical music, score analysis, and conducting tips. I want to thank all of my patrons for making this series possible, for your continuous appreciation, and for your suggestions, like this one. And now, on with Bruckner. The opening is very energetic. The strings establish an incessant rhythmic pattern that moves with sweeping tension from piano to fortissimo within the first two bars. On the third bar, the first theme makes its entrance in a powerful brass chorale. Harmonically speaking, Bruckner keeps us in no man's land. We should be in C minor. Bruckner already begins with an F sharp in unison. Now yes, that would be part of the harmony of the dominant, but we can only deduct that since there are no other points of reference. Secondly, the harmonies shift immediately, moving all the way to a B flat minor and a D flat major. Everything has the sense of an epic journey. On the D flat, the gloriousness is amplified by the entrance of the trumpets. Follows a diminuendo, immediately interrupted by the timpani, who retake the string's rhythmic pattern and lead to a reiteration of the theme, one step higher. A similar schema applies. A diminuendo over two bars is interrupted by a sudden fortissimo in a new iteration of the theme. It's not quite the same though, as Bruckner takes the main cells and transforms them, though leaving the character intact. The engine underneath continues incessantly. This musical idea, though, integrates a descending line in contrast with the first exposition of the theme, which is cleverly used by Bruckner to start dissipating the tension. On these elements, Bruckner builds a coda to this first section, thinning out the orchestration. Only the violins are left for the strings, only the oboes and the clarinets for the woodwinds, while the brass section employs a horn and three trombones. The second theme is, in fact, remarkable in its reminders of both the first and the third movement of the symphony. It's a slower, langsame, broad, bright, cantabile line with a lively counterpoint. That is the horn doubling half of the second violins, while the other half doubles the violas. The entrance of the cellos and basses is an answer to the first violin's question, leading to the end of the phrase. The theme is repeated with the addition of a clarinet doubling the first violins, while the cellos double the violas and the second violins are no longer divisi. Another chorale with small drops by the strings in pizzicato imprints even more solemnity on the music. The phrase is all for the brass, with the warm, embracing sound of the horns, trombones, and tuba, echoed at the very end by a couple of shy oboes and clarinets. The scene is repeated, half a step higher, and proceeds into a short transformation of the theme. If we look closely, it's a master lesson on how to transform a simple scale into a great piece of music. A daring movement of the violins in the octaves, completely alone, lands on a G-flat major, where the melismatic counterpoint of the flute lightens the atmosphere. It's a short section, at the end of which the timpani anticipate and link to the third theme of this movement. It's a march, reusing the material of the introduction to the third theme of the first movement and ending up on a complete suspension. The indication lunga pausa, long pause, creates a moment of silence in anticipation of the following section. It's a very serene moment. Or so it seems. The answer to these 4 bars is of a much darker tone. After the fermata on a rest, another moment of active silence, the same idea is retaken by a melancholic oboe while the strings in pizzicato retake the rhythm of the march. We eventually land on a G-flat major and subsequently on a B-flat major, closing the exposition with a juxtaposition of the march rhythm and the skeleton on the first theme. The development begins in a very easygoing way, almost naively, with the first theme in a relaxed E-flat major. Naturally, the tension is bound to increase sooner rather than later. Various ideas return, moving very distinctively from one section to another, till they explode in a full fortissimo. Notice the absence of the low strings and the bassoons. Only 8 bars, and the dynamics drop back down to piano, only to build up to a fortissimo again, this time including almost everyone. Notice that the double basses are still absent. Again, 8 bars, after which 2 bars of crescendo grow from mezzo forte to fortissimo, triple fortissimo actually, now including double basses as well as timpani. This explosion falls back very soon onto a more reflective moment. The motor is provided by a new rhythmical element, the triplets. The re-elaboration of the material intensifies with a more intricate counterpoint. Until the very initial rhythm anticipates the recapitulation. Notice the more dramatic orchestration compared to the beginning. The rhythmical element is given to the woodwinds, cellos, and the basses, while the violins and the violas add intensity with their descending figures. After an even bigger climax, the music quiets down suddenly with bits of the theme in the horn and bass line. All the pieces are coming together, moving towards the end. And yet, Bruckner finds time to slow down for an iteration of the second theme. And then of the third section. The first theme appears in the brass, while Bruckner prepares the coda. It's basically one long crescendo. It starts slow, ruhig, and pianissimo in C minor with arpeggios of the violins on sustaining notes of the lower strings and brass. Notice the soft touch of the timpani. Gradually becoming more and more intense. Bruckner retreats to a piano briefly, but the pulsating energy is perceivable all the way through. And finally, a fortissimo prepares to unleash all the power of the C major in triple forte with full orchestra. And the symphony ends in a majestic way, with hope sweeping away all the pain that came before. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel by clicking on the subscribe button right below this video and ring the bell so that you will get notified every time a new video comes out. For more in-depth analysis, conducting technique and conducting exercises, log on my website where you can find more than 100 videos and follow my Facebook group. And if you want to support this series, you're always welcome to do so on Patreon. All the links are in the description. Let me know in the comments what you think about this piece, if you have any suggestions for future videos, and I will see you in the next episode of this series. And meanwhile, please continue to enjoy music and be well. Ciao!